Only walking down the street, you wouldn't think anything different.
14-year-old Rylan Whittington is a typical Southern California teenager. And the Whittingtons, along with mom Hillary, dad Jeff, and sister Brinley, are a typical family. The only difference, though, in Rylan's eyes, is what this family can mean to the tens of thousands of kids under 18 who identify as transgender.
We put our story out there so people could see that like there's another family out there that is going through what we're going through, or there's another family who's proud of who they are.
Before Rylan could even speak, he managed to tell his parents that he is a boy.
I could just see that it wasn't him trying to be a brat. It was like painful. It was truly painful for him to have to wear feminine clothing and for us constantly telling him that you're a girl.
And unlike some trans kids, when Rylan came out at age 5 a few years later, he had the full support of his parents.
A bit of a news piece on a young trans boy that they're telling his whole story on Fox News without any interjections or hatred, just telling his story, which actually ended up being a pretty positive story at the end. Let's watch a little bit more about this because he did deal with some issues as he went through this entire process. Let's watch.
Initially, there was some pushback from us in trying to understand this.
We were confused like most people are. We thought that gender and sexuality were the same thing. It took us a while to figure out that those two things are different and that children actually do recognize their gender identity very young. Some of them, not all.
But they listened to Rylan and to Hillary's conservative faith.
For me, it's just a deep spiritual belief that you believe in God and he, created us the way he wanted us. Well, then yes, he created Rylan just the way he is.
We didn't listen and we pushed back.
That pushback led that child to turn to self-harm as a teenager, which 60% of trans and non-binary kids engage in, according to the Trevor Project. More than 50% consider suicide.
That for me was the turning point. I didn't want to see Rylan to go through that.
I'd rather have a living son than a dead daughter.
What a line there. It actually gets aired on Fox News, which is surprising to many people, including people over at the Daily Wire. Let's go to some of the things. Says Matt Walsh was very unhappy about this and went to tweeting over this issue, specifically because it was on Fox News. So he says, I've appeared on Fox News many times. I appreciate the platform that they've given me. If what I'm about to say ruins that relationship, so be it. We have to call this evil lunacy out wherever we see it, especially on our own side. I want to point out, first of all, that I'm not sure if Fox has revealed publicly yet that they're not this fair and balanced organization, because every time conservatives, Donald Trump did it many times, fell out of line with Fox News or didn't like what they said one time, they started saying, this is not what our side is supposed to do. I thought Fox News wasn't on your side. I thought Fox News wasn't a propaganda political arm of the Republican Party, but they keep saying the opposite. Anyways, Ben Shapiro really went off because he tweeted this out. This would be absolute despicable, insane lunacy if I saw it on CNN or MSNBC. To see it on Fox News is a complete betrayal of anything remotely resembling conservatism or decency. Again, I didn't think Fox News was supposed to be resembling conservatism and betrayal of complete and utter conservatism. I didn't know that they could betray the Republican Party if they're not a wing of it. Anyways, he went on and he said more. It says every element of this video is propagandistic, dangerous garbage. The report states that this biologically female child was choosing her gender before she could speak. This is madness. And the report further states that Rylan's parents began social transition at the age of 5. This is child abuse. The vast majority of children who display signs of gender dysphoria desist over time. So he has all his thoughts about this and what things he could have gone through, and also he pushed back on the fact that this child was going through suicidal thoughts, wasn't comfortable in his skin or in the clothes that he was forced to wear either. Some of your thoughts on this before we go to how far this guy really went, because he kept going and he kept going and he kept going.
I think this is a great story. They did such a good job, especially the mom in the interview, talking about the distinction between sexuality and gender, talking about God making the child exactly, who they should be. And if that's transgender, that's okay. And what's more patriotic, what's more of the American dream than supporting your kids to be their best selves and to be happy? I mean, this is what Fox should be reporting if Fox was a fair and even-sided news coverage source, but they're obviously not. And that's why these two guys, Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh, are extremely triggered by this, saying that our side shouldn't be doing this because they really see Fox News as a vessel for spreading white Christian nationalism in the United States. And when they cover real stories about what's going on with people in the United States, that's not the typical coverage that you get from Fox News. And so I think these snowflakes are pretty triggered by it.
Especially when you see the type of family that they showed there, which again, I said this when last week when I think it was Officer Edwards at the January 6th hearings, someone that these types of folks can maybe relate to a little bit more. It's a white family, they look very potentially conservative. I mean, that's just an assumption off of looks, but also my assumption came from the fact that they allowed their story to be told on Fox News. Maybe is a part of the frustration, because there was more from Ben Shapiro, because he even tried to push back on reality, because he said the report was absolute horrifying propaganda. We've got mom citing her Christian faith. Again, see what I'm talking about? He doesn't like that she cited her Christian faith because that relates to people that they try to usually push away from these types of thoughts. More, to justify the perversion of biological identity. We've got the radical gender theory activist Trevor Project states claiming that childhood transition is the only way to prevent suicide. And then he quotes her, "I'd rather have a living son than a dead daughter," is again a propagandistic sloganeering. There's no credible evidence that transition alleviates suicidal ideation among children who identify as LGBTQ+. But there's a problem with him saying that, because Forbes headline here says gender affirming care linked to less depression, lower suicide risk for trans youth. This isn't new. This isn't something people don't know. Also, the organization has peer-reviewed research paper found that gender affirming hormone therapy, also known as GAHT, is significantly related to lower rates of depression, suicidal thoughts, and suicide attempts by young people who identify as transgender and or non-binary. So just say things flying in the face of facts.